Hello, everyone, and welcome back to This Day in History. Our nightly look back at a particular day in history. We take a look back at the consequences and historical context of the day and the events. So, without any further ado, let's take a look back at February, the first This Day in History. And on this day, in 1884, the Oxford English Dictionary debuted. The first portion of the Oxford English Dictionary, considered the most comprehensive and accurate dictionary of the English language, debuted. It took over 40 years until the final portion was published in April 1928, and the full dictionary was complete at over 400,000 words and phrases in 10 volumes and published under the title A New English Dictionary on Historical Principles. So, before this, English dictionaries were not reliable. Afterwards, they got pretty accurate. And that's a big dictionary. Just imagine looking for a word in that sucker. That's also something children don't have to do anymore, is go look a word up in a large dictionary. Some births that occurred on this day. In 1901, in Bethany, Missouri, Frank Buckles was born. Mr. Buckles would live to be 110. And Mr. Buckles has an important distinction. He was the last American veteran from World War I when he died in 2011 at the age of 110. As I said, he served in World War I. He was the oldest living World War I veteran when he died. And just lived an extraordinary life. His funeral in March of 2011 was attended by President Barack Obama and Vice President Joe Biden. They paid their respects as he was laid to rest in Arlington National Cemetery. And President Obama, on the day of Mr. Buckles' interment, ordered all flags at government buildings and Navy ships to be flown at half staff. And he has that power as had that power as president. And 16 state governors did as well. The Senate passed a resolution, as well as the House of Representatives, honoring the life of Mr. Buckles. Some deaths that occurred on February 1st. In 2013, in New York City, Ed Koch died at the age of 88. Mr. Koch was mayor of New York City from 1978 until 1989. Koch served at a consequential time in New York history. Near the end of his term, it said that race relations were not good, and they took a downturn. So Koch served, as I said, as a consequential time as mayor of New York. He served, of course, in the 80s and 70s. He would, even though he was a Democrat, he was reelected for his second term on both the Republican and Democratic line. In New York State, you're able to run on multiple party lines for office, and he ran on both the Republican and Democratic line. Interestingly enough, Rudy Giuliani, when he would run for mayor, would run on the party ticket, obviously the Republican Party ticket, but also the Liberal Party ticket. That's something people forget about Rudy today, is Rudy was a pretty Rockefeller Republican, but Koch, like I said, would cross party lines to support Republicans. He supported George W. Bush's reelection. He endorsed Barack Obama in 2008. In 2012, he endorsed George Pataki, of course, a Republican governor of New York. He endorsed Mr. Bloomberg. He endorsed Giuliani, but rescinded that endorsement after seeing Giuliani in action as mayor. He believed that Giuliani was not a good person. He saw him as an authoritarian. But he also endorsed Peter King and many Republicans for congressional offices. And he also served in the House of Representatives prior to becoming mayor of New York for just under 10 years. He served from 1969, of course, until he became mayor in 1978. And Koch would ride the subway with New Yorkers, and he would also stand on a street corner and ask, "How am I doing?" He was later in his life, he became a film critic, would review films, and moviegoers would often be surprised to find Mr. Koch watching the movie Bear. Koch is one of those mayors that you look at and you say, he probably did a good job. He described himself as a liberal with sanity. And as mayor, he was known for cutting taxes and cutting 7,000 city workers from the payroll, and cutting spending that he viewed as wasteful. So that's interesting. Now, I cannot talk about Koch without talking about this subject. Koch was a lifelong bachelor, and not that this matters at all. But Koch was a speculation for much of his life that he was a homosexual, because during that time, if a man chose to never marry, they were assumed to be a homosexual. Koch never dignified these allegations with a confirmation or denial, and even one time he said, "What the bleep does it matter if I am?" So I enjoy that response from Koch. Maybe sometimes you just don't want to get married. Maybe you just like being you. So Ed Koch, a true character, and very much needed politician of his ilk today. Someone not afraid to cross party lines, and someone also who's not afraid to break with party orthodoxy, and tell it like it is. I like that. A liberal with sanity. That's a good line. All right, everybody. So tonight, after the Des Moines Register poll is released, so I can crunch the numbers on it because it's consequential, and I can compare it to the other poll numbers that have come out, I will release my Iowa caucus prediction video and other thoughts on Iowa. So that is coming tonight after 8 o'clock, and I'm going to set it to publish tomorrow morning. So I'll film it, put it up, and then you'll get to see it in the morning. Without any further ado, y'all have a great night, and I'll see y'all in just a little bit.